Coming up right now, the newest episode from Carr, Gwyn, and Ode on Three Pagans and a Cat.
The corn in golden light waves o'er the plain. The sickle's gleam is bright, full swells the grain. Welcome to Wheel of the Year Mabon, the 19th episode of Three Pagans and a Cat. Today's opening is courtesy of 19th century English poet Felicia Dorothea Hemans. You may call me Ode.
You may call me Carr. I'm Ode's father.
You may call me Gwyn. I'm Ode's mother.
I can't believe we're 19 episodes in.
I know, it is. We're quite amazing. Deep, actually.
I kind of missed that earlier.
Like,
yeah.
We're going to hit 20.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Holy shit.
They're marching right along.
Yeah.
Linear progression of time as we perceive it and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the first episode of the month of September when we're recording this to read our patrons.
And Carr is going to do it this time.
Yes.
That's right.
And you'll understand why as soon as he begins, probably.
To all of our kittens.
We love you.
Yep. We don't read your name, but we love you.
We love you, love you, love you.
Our cats are Aaron Mao, Gary Bearstorm, Kay Kremer, Kay Sat, and Susan DeHaan. Our hunters are Charles Howison, Fen Ashburn, Kiera Teagardner, Stevie Thompson, Tally Kazoil Thomason, and Vex Arcana. Our tiger is Akaneko. And our jaguar is Justin Stanage.
And the reason we're laughing is because of the radio voice. It's very impressive.
If I have to do this kind of stuff, it just happens.
Yeah, but did it have to be AM radio voice?
It's where I started in radio, so I guess yes.
It's default radio voice.
Yeah,
I'm sorry. AM radio voice always makes me giggle. It just does.
All right, cool.
Carr's got a series of voices he can pull out
That's right.
at will, essentially.
That is very true.
Because he went to broadcast journalism school.
Yes, he did.
It did indeed.
All right, and so we do want to make an announcement before we start this.
Now I'm trying to remember all the things we talked about at the beginning of the episode that we actually recorded at the beginning of the episode.
Well, okay, that was a very quick statement.
One of the things we talked about was the fact that if we seem a little tired and punchy today, it's because yesterday we were out all day looking at the house and the town we're about to move to.
In yea, verily, a couple of weeks, probably during the same time we are supposed to be recording to
you live from our bedroom.
Recording our next episode. So there could be a delay in
the schedule.
Getting out episode 20.
Yeah.
Exactly. So just be patient with us. We are,
because we don't know exactly when we're moving. The house we're moving into is being renovated right now.
It could potentially be before Mabon.
Right.
But it could be after or on
during Mabon.
Right.
We have no idea.
We're not
It'll probably be this month. That's all we know.
It will
really
be sometime in the next few weeks.
Yeah.
But the cool thing is we are going to be getting a dedicated recording space and a yard where we can do ritual work
and
gardening, and we're very excited.
Yeah, there are a lot of good, exciting things about this move, but because it's a move, it comes with all the attendant drama of moving.
And I also realized we forgot one of the important parts about moving to that area. We're going to be near Arts and Crafts.
Oh, yeah. Yes, we're moving to within 4 miles of Arts and Crafts.
Yeah. So we're very excited about that because we'll get
part
to
of the
see,
reason we're moving there.
That's right. It is. We'll get to see a lot more of Pat and Paul.
Mm-hmm.
It's part of the reason why we're moving there, but also my job transferred me there.
Yeah,
okay, so that's the reason.
But your job, we could have moved to 2 different locations, and the reason we're moving to Waterville insteed of the other one
is because it's closer to Arts and Crafts.
Right.
I mean, that's true. That is a thing.
Agreed. Yes.
So we were out all day yesterday, and then
were.
we came home and did divinations, because we do that every Saturday, or we try to remember to do that every Saturday, which is draining in its own way. So we're
a little punchy.
Very tired. Yeah. And then there were huge thunderstorms last night that went on until like 6 a.m.
That kept Ode and I up.
Yep.
I slept through it.
Gwyn slept through it.
I still needed a nap.
So we're just all a little
tired.
A little drained today.
But we'll
do our best, because we're talking about Mabon.
Yeah, but one more thing before we
Oh, that's right.
God.
Oh, that's right. I forgot. He talks about this.
I know. It's like, come on, let it go, man. Let it go.
I'm not
he never
letting
will.
it go.
He will never let it go.
I have been bringing
eternal.
this up internally.
In the family, yeah.
He has.
Since he realized it was happening.
Yes, he
for
has.
probably 3 months.
Yeah.
So now I'm bringing it to the listeners.
Because you're the only ones who can help.
Please help us.
This has to be rectified. I cannot continue on if this does not get rectified.
Listeners, you have
Just
to
lying,
rescue
listeners.
Us. Rescue us from
The
this
podcast
crazy.
will continue.
Rescue us from the crazy. Okay, go ahead.
We have been listened to in every state in the United States. 49 of them. But wait! There's 50 states in the United States, and that's the one we're missing.
Mississippi,
Mississippi, needs to stake and listen to the... What?
Yes, of course they do. They absolutely have to.
They don't even need to. They don't even need to listen. We just need someone to download it. We have a map in our statistics. We have a map of the world, and we have a map of the United States because we live in the United States. So obviously, that's the one that we're most concerned with.
Mississippi.
You can see the states turn a different color if a certain number of people listen to them. They become different shades of blue, different tints of blue. Mississippi is the only one that has no blue on it, and it is driving Carr insane.
And in turn, it is driving me insane. So, Mississippi witches, I beg of you, please help a sister out.
If you know someone in Mississippi,
or if you live in Alabama or Louisiana and you're close to the border, please
drive
across,
download
connect to Wi-Fi at some coffee joint that has the Mississippi as their thing, and download it. Please, if you're flying to the airport, just connect. I'm only asking for one.
He just can't stand it. It's the symmetry of it, I guess. He just can't stand to have one state not be blue.
The irregularity is driving him insane.
It really is.
All right, maybe.
This doesn't bother him with the whole world map. There's plenty of countries that haven't listened to us.
Okay, but there's 200 and something countries, so I can somewhat go, well, okay, and we have no connectivity or no connection to them, and half of them are in places they probably don't have very much internet.
We've never been to Mississippi. We have no connection to Mississippi
I've been
either.
through Mississippi. Well, no, I take that back. I've been over the Mississippi River. Does that count?
No.
Okay.
I've maybe been in the car when we drove through Mississippi.
No, I'm the only one who's ever been to Mississippi.
Okay, was it a good time? Do you have sentimental memories of Mississippi?
It was good. It was good.
All right, people.
I had crawfish boil.
The plea has gone out. Let us please move on. Okay. Please. Mabon.
I think that was everything we talked about at the beginning of the episode that we actually recorded at the beginning of this episode. I think we've repeated all of it.
Do we have anybody in the Discord who can confirm that?
Hakaneka's still here, but we haven't heard from them. They're presumably just listening to our madness.
Probably gone numb from madness.
Yeah. So, we're talking about Mabon. I'm actually really excited to talk about Mabon because it was the first holiday that Gwyn and I celebrated together as pagans. Carr hadn't, worked out what he was going to do yet. He was still sort of exploring his options, so he was like an observer. But last year, Mabon, Gwyn and I got together and we made our flower crowns for the first time.
We went to Pagan Pride.
We did a little ritual. We had, it was a fun time. It was the first time that I, as an adult, had worshipped as a pagan.
And it was really awesome. It was an amazing experience.
Yeah, it was really good. So, Mabon has a special place in my heart for that reason, if for no other. Also, because it's close to my birthday, so.
That's right. Which is September 3rd.
Oh, yeah, that's
Make sure you wish our darling Ode happy birthday.
Yeah, we'll be this will go up on my birthday, because we're going to be editing on my birthday to make sure that it goes up on time.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So.
My Labor Day baby.
Yeah. Paper products.
Oh my god.
They were not paper products.
They were not paper products. They were baby products.
Yes.
Bibs.
Yep.
Diapers.
Paper
Formula.
products.
Formula.
Yeah, babies drink paper, right?
Okay, moving on to Mabon.
Mabon this year. Mabon can take place any time between the 21st and the 24th.
He's checking to make sure.
Can take place any time between the 21st and the 24th of September because it's an equinox, so the tropical year and the calendar year don't match up, so it sort of moves around the calendar year. This year, it will be September 23rd, although people will celebrate through
on the 21st.
Yeah, people will celebrate through the whole week, basically.
And you can.
Yeah.
You can. You can spend the entire month celebrating Mabon. Why the fuck not?
If you want to.
I kind of plan to.
Well, what heathens do during this time, those who don't celebrate, like I celebrate Mabon, because I just follow the wheel of the year, because I live here. Heathens who celebrate just specifically heathen holidays do Winter's Finding, which is just 2 weeks or something, from September 12th to September 23rd or something.
Gotcha.
So it's you can celebrate whatever, whenever.
Yeah.
There aren't rules about this.
I would say I probably start celebrating at the beginning of September by I'm starting to bring in the colors, bringing in the foods and things like that.
I'll start celebrating next Thursday.
Okay.
Well, it's because next Thursday is the first day that I can then see beyond that has no 80-degree weather.
Yes.
I've looked forward exactly a month past that date, and at this point, there are no 80-degree days in any of those. They're all 70s and 60s.
Yes,
that is a celebration for me.
True, but there are people who celebrate Mabon in areas where they don't have cooler weather.
Oh,
they
and
don't have
BTW.
changing of
I said for me.
Yeah.
I wasn't saying they have
For
to.
everybody, yeah. BTW in the Southern Hemisphere, it's
Oh, yeah.
Ostara right now.
So happy
Yeah.
Ostara to our
And go
southern
listen to that
listeners.
episode.
Yeah.
back
We have
there.
that one already prepared.
It's previous.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
They're gesturing behind them as though you can see them.
Well, you can see us.
I can see you. And then I comment about it to the mic. So
That's right.
they see you by proxy.
All right, so tell us more about Mabon and, well, at least the history of how it got its name. Because
Yeah.
Mabon, as far as I can tell from what you have told me, is really not named for what it
No,
actually
it's
celebrates.
completely made up by one guy.
It's not made up. It's adopted.
It's adopted.
By Aidan
Because-
Kelly
Okay.
in the 1970s.
Because Mabon, the celebration, what we celebrate is
It's named after an individual.
Yeah,
Right.
but it's the autumn equinox, which
Right.
is the second harvest.
Right.
Now tell us how it got its name.
Okay, so Aidan Kelly in the 1970s, as the wheel was being expanded from 4 holidays to 8 holidays, was assigning names to all of them that were short and catchy and Germanic or Celtically derived, because that was his job, I guess.
Yeah.
Like you do.
That's the thing we mostly think of Aidan Kelly for, is naming the Wheel of the Year holidays.
Yep.
So
Other than that, I wouldn't know his name. So
yeah.
Hey, somebody had to do it.
Yeah, exactly. So he named, sometimes he had sort of a thin reason for naming them, and sometimes he just picked a name that sounded snappy and that was vaguely familiar to him. And that seems to be what he did with Mabon.
Mabon.
He named this holiday, the autumn equinox, for Mabon ap Modron, who is a figure in the Mabinogion, which we'll come back around to. It means either son of the mother or great son of the great mother, sort of depending on how you do your
Translation.
Etymology.
your etymology,
Yeah.
your transliteration. My understanding is that the Mab part of Mabon means son, and the on part of Mabon it doesn't actually have like a word meaning, it just is an augmenter, so it means like son, like most son, great son, big
Right.
son, something
Yep.
like that. Augmented son. We can rebuild him, son.
Right.
And the same with Modron. Mod means mother, on means more.
Right.
So sometimes it's translated to great son of the great mother. And he is, at 3 days old, stolen from his mother and
Hidden away.
hidden away in chains in a dungeon and a castle for his entire life. In the Mabinogion, there are a lot of stories, but one of them involves an evil wizard who transforms into a correspondingly evil boar, and they need to hunt and capture this boar so that they can present it to a king, so that when they present it to the king, he will agree to let the protagonist marry his daughter. Problem is that the evil boar is actually an evil wizard, so he's really canny and hard to catch, so they need an extremely good hunter, right?
So supposedly,
So, apparently, even though he was stolen from his mother as a literal 3-day-old infant and has never seen the light of day before, Mabon ap Modron is inexplicably known, just as general knowledge, to be an extremely good hunter. How he learned this, we don't know. Apparently it's just an innate quality. How other people know about him, we don't know. Apparently it's just common knowledge. But they know that he exists, they don't know where exactly. So they go on this big adventure, and they solve a bunch of puzzles, and they talk to a fish, and the fish tells them it's a salmon, because of course it is, it's Celtic lore. So the salmon tells them where they can go to find Mabon ap Modron, and they go to that area, and they hear him weeping and lamenting that he's been, tied up in a dungeon his whole life, and they rescue him, and then he goes on to capture the boar so that they can present it alive to the king and
gotcha.
get the protagonist married. And then we never hear of Mabon ap Modron ever again. The theory is that he is derived from a Celtic Gaulish god named Mapanos, who we think dealt with youth, but that is pretty much all we know about him. We know his name, that he was a god of youth of some kind, that his mother was Dea Matrona, who we think became Modron in the story. We know that these figures existed in continental Celtic cult. We know that they existed especially in the area of Gaul and in northern Britain. We don't know if those cults were the same or if they sprung up independently. There's just a lot we don't know about these figures. We don't even know if they were actually worshipped in cultists or if they were just figures in, like, myths
Right.
who didn't have active worship carried on for them. Although scholars are, I wouldn't say certain, but, you know, relatively convinced, at least some scholars are relatively convinced that these figures became Mabon ap Modron and Modron herself in the Welsh Mabinogion. We don't know anything about them or what their religious status was.
Or significance.
Yeah. The other thing is the name of the Welsh story, Mabinogion. We don't actually know exactly what Mabinogion means. There are some schools of thought that what it means is of or relating to Mabon. Specifically, Mabon ap Modron, because he's the only Mabon in the story.
Right.
He's in a very small portion of the Mabinogion. They tell the story about how he was captured. They go on the adventures to figure out where he is. They rescue him. He captures the boar. And then we never see or hear from him again.
Right.
The theory is that the original story of the Mabinogion, before it was written down in the form that we have preserved, Mabon was a much more central figure, or possibly the central figure.
Right.
And that for some reason...
The protagonist.
He was replaced.
That for some reason he was relegated to this smaller part where he has essentially no agency, where he is purely a victim who was rescued and then given a task to perform.
Is it possible he and his mother could have been gods that kind of fell out of favor, and whoever the hero was somebody that became in favor?
That's not impossible. This is one of those things where we'll probably...
It's conjecture.
Yeah, it's all conjecture. We'll never know unless we stumble across some amazing, archaeological relic that unlocks the whole story.
Or time travel.
But it's unlikely that we'll ever know exactly if or why this happened. It seems as though it did. Just based on the name, because it's a strange name to give to a story that's not actually about Mabon.
Right.
If this is what the name means, which, there are some schools of thought that that's what it means.
Given the history of his name and what the story is actually about, it really has nothing to do with Second Harvest, does it?
In Wiccan traditions, Mabon is the part of the Great Cycle where the sun god who has
drawn down.
Yeah, who has, provided bounty is killed, essentially, is threshed.
Drawn down back into the womb of the great goddess.
To gestate and be reborn later in the spring.
Yeah.
That is not really the arc of Mabon ap Modron. The arc of Mabon ap Modron is arguably the opposite of that. He's kept in darkness his entire life.
Right.
And is rescued at as an adult, having never seen the world, to do one specific thing. And then essentially, as far as we can tell, he's just cut loose.
Yeah. So that being said, if you are a pagan who is like, I don't want to call this celebration Mabon because it has nothing to do with the autumn equinox, then don't. Just call it the autumn equinox.
Yep. Or call it anything you want. It doesn't really matter.
It's a celebration.
There's probably words in your tradition that you can
somewhere,
use.
Yep. And the point is, it is a celebration of the second harvest, of the changing of the season, and...
Now, I actually really like Mabon's story. I feel bad for him, because I said, dude gets the short end of many sticks in this story. But I like Mabon in this story. I like, in a sense, associating him with this holiday, even though it's not the typical association. For me, this holiday can now be about something slightly different. Because, we have 3 harvest festivals.
Right.
This feels like a lot. I have this problem with a lot of the Wheel of the Year, where I feel like we're repeating ourselves a lot. A lot of the spring festivals feel very similar. A lot of the autumn festivals feel very similar.
Yeah.
I believe for a lot of farming communities, this would be the final harvest, not Samhain.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It really depends on your region and what your crops are.
And what your crops are. This would be your final harvest, not your second.
Which is maybe why we have 3 of them, is the different regions.
Different. Well, that's that's the thing. The Wheel of the Year wasn't put together out of one group's calendar system.
It was multiple.
It was syncretically a bunch of different holidays smooshed together into one ultra calendar.
Right.
Yeah, and I will say, and this is a holiday really of balance, because
it's the
equinox So you've got equal light, equal day on this day, and then the sun begins to wane. So that's an important distinction for this holiday for a lot of people.
But I find that a lot of these holidays have very similar ways to celebrate and very similar themes. So for me, moving forward, knowing more about Mabon's story now, I'm probably actually going to celebrate this as a holiday of, like, recovery and maybe seeking or hunting things. Not so much as, like, a fulfillment holiday, the way that I think of Lammas as being like the fulfillment of all your work in the summer. I think of that as being Lammas. So I would probably, for me, think of Mabon as a holiday about the things Mabon goes through, about recovery and removal from bondage and
hunting,
finding things that have escaped you. So I think that's what I'm going to be focusing on this year. So if you, like me, look at the list of harvest holidays and think, why do I have to do all of these?
You don't, just so you know.
You don't have to, first of all. But if you do want to celebrate all of them, just consider celebrating different aspects of them. That's what I'm doing.
Right. Do we want to talk about the gods?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, since Mabon ap Modron, the figure, is just...
May or may not be a god.
Well, is a literary figure who maybe was derived from a god.
Right.
Whom we know nothing about. There are other gods you could worship during this time.
And most of them tend to be hunter.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because it goes along with...
Right. That is definitely an association to Mabon's job, anyway.
Hunters and associated with wisdom.
Yeah. So Artemis in the Greek tradition. Kronos.
Right, the standard... Well, Kronos is interesting because he's actually the god of, like, beasts.
Male animals, Yep,
and also of, like...
You think he'd be on the
fertility,
the
and
hunting.
vegetation.
Well, but he's also most of Kronos' cultus is modern. We know very little about his ancient worship. We know that he existed because he's on the Gundestrup cauldron, I think.
Yes, yep.
But that's, like, again, one of those where we have very little information. But his modern cultus is very much about, like, he embraces the hunt and the experience of the hunt and the necessary deaths and sacrifices. So I think
even though he's a protector of the forest,
exactly,
he's still
he accepts, like, the natural cycle of the situation and like moves it forward. I think Kronos is a really interesting god,
and I think he's honestly, after thinking on that line, it would be an excellent god to focus on during the autumn equinox because of that very reason, balance. And the harvest, not only with the hunting, but with harvesting.
Something's got to die so you can eat.
Exactly.
Diana, Roman. Pern, which is a regional British.
Sometimes associated with Kronos.
Yes, And then Mixcoatl, which is Aztec.
An Aztec god.
Which I think is actually pretty cool that the list I found included that because it's...
So often you get just the European gods,
So Odin, which I'm sure you can speak to.
Yeah, the Odin gets this weird reputation where people either think of him as, like, solely a war god or solely the, quote, all-father, where they just think of him almost in a Zeus-y way. He is not that. Odin is, first of all, super complicated. Second of all, basically an ascended trickster. Third of all, way into death and murder. So, hunting... high-key a thing for him. Wild hunt starting up pretty soon.
Yep.
Odin's at the head of that one. Have fun.
Ogun.
Yeah, who's a Yoruba god.
Yep. From West Africa. And then Paquette, Egyptian.
Nice.
And then I forgot this one earlier, the Muses. They would be an interesting...
an interesting source for your worship.
Worship on Mabon, as well as the Snake Woman, who is Aboriginal, Hotai, who is Japanese, and Dionysus, Bacchus, and all of the wine deities.
Yeah, wine is actually a correspondence for this time of year.
Apples, grapes are huge.
Anything that you make into a wine, cherries, John Barleycorn. Is also one of the guys.
You're sliding into southern there.
All of a sudden we became Mississippi.
Well,
and you just
want
drive down there. So
he's never going to let it go, people. Never going to let it go. Epona.
Oh yeah, Epona.
Epona is also
who is the Celtic goddess of horses. And
she has other associations as well.
I always think of her as the horse goddess.
So do I too. Yeah. I as well. But I noticed I was reading something and she was listed as
associated with a lot of other things.
Associated with a lot of other things. So
gods are big, complicated people who have lots of time on their hands. They can be associated with whatever they damn well please.
Yeah, that's right.
Every time someone's like, "So Freya's the love goddess, right?" I'm just like, "Oh, sit down. Mm-hmm. We're gonna have a long, long talk."
Yeah. And obviously, the symbols of Mabon would include corn, autumn flowers, red poppies, nuts, grains, leaves, acorns, pine and cypress cones, oak sprigs, vines, anything that has to do with autumnal plenty.
Yeah.
I have a bunch of other ones.
Okay.
You want to hear some?
Yeah.
Random?
Yeah.
Okay. So foods would be breads, nuts, apples, pomogranates, that kind of thing.
Autumn foods. Ooh, soups. Make soups.
Yeah, carrot, onion.
This is the time. This is the time when Gwyn starts allowing soup back onto the menu because she insists
in the summer.
She's always every time I ask, she's always insisting that it's a fall food, but I want it at all times.
Stew is the one that you really are after. But.
So colors would be all shades of red, all shades of brown, all shades of orange,
gold,
as well as a deep gold, some indigo, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I do love indigo.
It's a good color.
Mm-hmm.
Activities of Mabon would be winemaking, gathering dried herbs, plant seeds, and seed pods to store for next year.
Yeah, to dry and prep for the spring.
Walking in the woods, scattering offerings in harvest fields, offering libations to trees.
Yeah,
which is what you said.
Yep.
That is wassailing.
Yep, exactly. That's what wassailing actually was, and we've just developed it into let's drink ourselves.
Let's drink some cider.
Yep. Adorning burial sites with leaves, acorns, and pine cones to honor those who have passed over.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
And then some of the herbs.
Yeah, this is a time when people start doing a lot of ancestor stuff.
Yep.
People start to feel more connected to that.
Yep.
Herby things would be honeysuckle, marigold, milkweed, myrrh, passion flower, Solomon seal, tobacco, oddly enough, thistle, marigold, chamomile, and Gwyn's garden gems.
Very nice segue there.
Subtle.
Very subtle. Okay, today what I'm going to be talking about is an herb that is associated with Mabon, with the autumn equinox. It is...
That's why I did it.
Yes, I know. Okay. And it is garden sage. And I want to make sure that I let you know I'm not including white sage in this. It is
say the official name.
Yeah, well, the official name of garden sage is Salvia officinalis. So when you're looking for sage to grow or use for your autumn feasts and magical workings, make sure you're looking for Salvia officinalis, because white sage is actually a sacred herb that is used by shamanic traditions and Native American traditions, and it's over-harvested, it's overused, and so we really need to...
It's endangered.
It's endangered, so I really am one who I believe we need to stay away from white sage and start making use of garden sage. And again, that is Salvia officinalis. It is a perennial and is part of the mint family, and it has a really interesting history. It's associated with healing and has been since ancient days. Some of the lore is that the Romans would use it in sacrifices and ceremonies. They also used it to clean their teeth and to stimulate the brain and assist with memory.
Interesting.
And then here's where it really gets interesting for me. In the Middle Ages, they used garden sage to treat fevers, liver disease, and epilepsy. It was made into a tea to drink as an overall health tonic, and the fresh leaves were used to cure warts. Additionally, if they cooked the leaves in wine, it was used to prevent pregnancy. So
I wonder if science has looked into these things.
It was kind of an early contraceptive.
Yeah.
And then it was also used to mask the taste of rancid meat. Now, the theory is that because sage does also have what's considered to be antibacterial qualities and the healing aspects of the plant, that when it was cooked with the meat, it actually protected people from getting sick and dying.
It would at least help with some of the bacteria.
Exactly. And then the Dutch traded sage with the Chinese for tea. As far as magic is concerned, it is considered masculine. It's associated with the element of air and the planet Jupiter. It is considered sacred to Zeus and Jupiter. It is used for things such as immortality. In fact, there was some of the lore said that if you tended it in the Middle Ages, if you tended sage throughout the month of May, it would give you immortality.
Interesting.
And so longevity, it's also used for protection, for granting wishes. It can alleviate sorrow after a death. And one interesting little, like for the wishes, if you write your wish on a leaf of sage, a sage leaf, and sleep with it under your pillow for 3 days and then bury it, your wish will be granted. It's also associated with wisdom. And then it's a very easy plant to grow.
Yeah.
It's considered basically a shrub, and it's an evergreen. So you can plant it either in a pot and kind of keep it in a controlled environment, but you can also put it in your garden space. It can grow in kind of, limited light, but it prefers full sun. It does you have to be careful of not overwatering it because it can get kind of molded if it gets too wet. It has to be in a well irrigated soil, right? Whether in a pot or in your garden.
Right. It doesn't like to have wet feet.
Exactly. Doesn't like to have wet feet, but it's one of the few herbs that's leaves get stronger tasting and more savory as it blooms, because it does bloom. It does have flowers. Yeah. And so you don't have to pinch off the flowers if you want to use it in culinary. And of course, as an herb, you put it with poultry,
in all kinds of things,
pork, with stuffing.
In stew.
It's a wonderful herb for cooking, for magic, for health. It's definitely something you want to have in your garden and in your home. Oh, and you can use the leaves also as an herbaceous accompaniment to any kind of a floral arrangement.
Nice.
And that's it for Gwyn's Garden Gems.
Lovely.
You're welcome. Other things that you can do during this time is some incense.
Don't do this.
Okay, some incense. So myrrh, oddly enough, sage, sweetgrass, pine, and frankincense.
Oops.
Listeners, Gwyn just drank my ginger ale for some reason.
I was thinking,
and she doesn't like ginger ale, so the face she made was great.
I like ginger tea, but I was expecting my tea, and it was not. And I was like, what the hell is that?
And then there's also stones that are, for this time as well, like sapphire, lapis lazuli, right? Did I say that correct?
Lapis lazuli.
There you go. Yep. Amber, topaz, amethyst, and odes, stone, corner!
He's putting us really close together this time. We usually have some stuff in the betweens.
Yeah, but it all went together.
Yeah, it all goes together.
That's true. Yep. And it's all about Mabon.
Yep.
Right, yep.
So it's funny that you mentioned amethyst. We're going to be talking about citrine today. Citrine is occasionally referred to as what?
The face he made was
what? Funny that you mentioned
I'm about to tell you why.
Talking about citrine. I'm like, okay.
Let me finish my segue.
Okay.
Citrine is sometimes referred to as burnt amethyst.
Oh, interesting.
Because the way you actually get citrine is amethyst is a quartz variant. The way you actually get citrine is that when amethyst is exposed to very high temperatures, its structure changes and it becomes, and so does its color, and it becomes citrine.
Oh, interesting.
Very interesting. Now that you're mentioning that, I can see the similarity.
And this is how ametrine happens, which is the combination of amethyst and citrine into one stone, is that sometimes in irregular conditions, only part of the crystal is exposed to the high heat. So only part of it becomes citrine. That can also be done...
I'm learning new stuff.
I know.
Thank you.
That can also be done artificially. In fact, a lot of the citrine that's on the market is artificially heat-treated amethyst. So it was mined as amethyst and was heat-treated in a lab to become citrine.
Gotcha.
It's still citrine. It was just not naturally mined that way.
Right.
One of the ways you can tell sometimes is... So the reason citrine becomes the yellow or reddish or brownish color that it is that it has iron in it. It has iron content. And depending on the degree of iron in it, it will change the way that the heat transforms the color.
Okay.
So the more iron there is in the crystal, the more in the reddish or rusty range it will be.
Okay.
That's true for natural citrine. But for some reason, citrine that is been heat treated in a lab from rawly mined amethyst goes much more into the rusty spectrum.
Oh, interesting.
So if you have a piece of citrine that has a really strong rust or reddish color to it, it's probable, not guaranteed, but probable that that was heat treated in a lab instead of being mined out of the ground that way.
Gotcha.
So if that's something that concerns you, look for citrine that's more in a yellow range.
Gotcha.
Yellow citrine is harder to find. It's a little rarer, although I think of citrine as a yellow stone. So,
right.
Because that's, for some reason, what I mostly see. What I have actually here with me is a yellow citrine. And because it's a quartz, it can be opaque or it can be translucent. It sort of depends on just the quality of the quartz that you get. It can have a lot of occlusions in it and a lot of other minerals in it, because quartz is one of those stones. First of all, quartz is just very, very common.
Right.
It's one of the most common minerals on Earth. And all of its variants are also fairly common. So amethyst is also extraordinarily commonly mined. And it's because citrine requires these very, very high temperatures to transform. Amethyst is much more common. So to boost the numbers of citrines on the market, they heat treat a bunch of amethyst to make citrine.
Sure.
Because amethyst you can find pretty much everywhere.
Gotcha.
Right. That's true.
So this is also a reason that you should not sunbathe your citrines. A lot of people I know like to put their stones out in the sun to charge. There are some stones you should not do that with because it will change the qualities of the mineral, and that is true for citrine. If you leave citrine out in the sun, that constant exposure to heat and light will change the structure of the mineral, and it will degrade, and the color will change.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you should actually keep your citrines. You can have them out, but you should not keep them out in full sun to charge or anything like that. You should, if you are going to put them away in a box somewhere so that they maintain in a bag.
Something dark.
Mm-hmm. Something dark so that they maintain, or even just in partial shade. Like it's not like it's not an extreme or immediate reaction. You just shouldn't leave them out in the sun all the time.
Over time of years, it
will degrade. Exactly. It will degrade the mineral of citrine.
Interesting.
Citrine has an association with wealth and abundance. It's often associated with material success or creative success. So amethyst is a stone that's very associated with creativity and imagination. Citrine is sometimes used as sort of the culmination of those ideas. Okay. Because it derives out of amethyst, essentially. So, like, you start with an amethyst, and this might be even especially true for an amethyst. This is why I always like to say, like, it doesn't just because it was created in a lab, that doesn't necessarily mean it is bad or different or wrong. Citrine that was heat treated in a lab that was very rapidly moved from amethyst to citrine instead of naturally over time in the earth may be even more primed to take the creative amethyst energy and immediately transform it into active success.
Gotcha.
Because that was its experience.
Exactly
right.
Its experience was, I was an amethyst, and then I went to a lab and immediately became a citrine.
Right.
So this is a very much like stone by stone sort of situation.
Yep.
Like, for example, my citrine has a very, relaxed tone. Mm-hmm. It doesn't ever feel like it's in a rush. It's a very comforting stone for me. Very mild tone. Sometimes stones like citrines and carnelians and things like that can be very, very active and a little exhausting even to work with. This citrine that I've got, and I suspect that it's a natural citrine. It's very, very hard to tell. Even gemologists would have a hard time. So as an amateur, I have no chance of telling if this is a natural or a heat-treated citrine. But I have a suspicion just from the energy I have on it that it's a natural citrine, just because it's so mellow. Like, it feels like it is very relaxed.
So it's mellow yellow.
It's mellow yellow. Yeah. Okay. So that's the most common use for citrine. It's also sometimes used for, and this is why I recommend it for Mabon, although, like I said, I'm celebrating Mabon in a slightly non-standard way. It's good for recovering from stress and anxieties.
Okay.
Not for dispelling stress and anxieties so much, but for helping you see, because when you've been in a stressful situation for a long time, your brain actually creates these pathways, these neural pathways that become familiar, where it starts to, even when you're in an improved situation, think as if you're still in your stressed situation. Right. This is where things like complex PTSD come from. Mm-hmm. We think because brains are wild. So when you get out of a stressful situation and your brain is still lingering in the stress space, even though you're no longer experiencing those stressors, citrine can be a good assistant in sort of breaking those habits and moving into a more positive space. Which, because I am now thinking a lot about Mabon ap Modron, the person, I think he could have used some citrine, because we don't find out what happens to him after he catches the boar. But I imagine it was probably a tough time, having spent his whole life in captivity.
Yeah. Yep.
Or is it like some of those stories where they put him back where they found him?
Yeah, who knows? We never find out. So I wish Mabon ap Modron had had some citrine, and I hope that you, listeners, have some citrine as well.
That's it for Odes Stone Corner!
No, I was just saying maybe we should raise a glass to poor Mabon.
Yeah, poor Mabon ap Modron. I drink this ginger ale in your name.
Tea.
Sorry that your life was so rough.
There's a drip.
We'll do it again on
Mabon.
On Mabon.
Yep.
All right, where are we going from here, oh keeper of everything? I actually have prayers, recipes, and activities still.
Yeah,
I have
let's
some
do
activities too.
So
Let's cover some of that.
So there were a bunch of different prayers, and so we'll post those, but I'll just tell you what they are.
Okay.
Because I find them interesting.
Okay.
So there's a Mabon invocation prayer. Right. That makes sense, right?
What is it? I'm curious. What is it invoking? Just like the spirit of autumn, basically?
Yep. Then there's a prayer for abundance.
Okay.
There is a prayer for balance.
Okay.
I was saying earlier, balance is a big theme of the autumn equinox.
Prayer to the gods of the vine.
Okay, makes sense.
Prayer to the Dark Mother.
Yes, that is a very interesting aspect of autumn equinox.
Yep.
Is rituals to the Dark Mother.
Which we can talk about in a bit, maybe.
Yep. Prayer of Thanksgiving, obviously, because this is kind of our Thanksgiving.
Yeah, basically.
Yep. And a home protection prayer focused on the Morgan.
Interesting.
Yeah. I thought those were interesting.
Well, because, Morgan's...
Right, hearth
one
and
of,
home.
Exactly. Well, one of her aspects is as the Queen of Sovereignty.
Exactly.
Right. So, maintaining the sovereignty of your personal home and property would be definitely within her wheelhouse.
And actually might be something we'd want to do, because it actually talks about the land as well.
Oh, good.
So it may be something that we want to do as we move into our new place.
We're going to be talking to the Landsvatir and setting up with the housewives. There's going to be a lot of moving in rituals we have to do.
Some of the activities I have are select the best of each vegetable, herb, fruit, nut, or other food you've harvested or purchased and give it back to the earth.
Okay.
Hang dried ears of corn around your home in appreciation for the harvest season. You can do meditations and chant as you store food away for the winter.
Right.
And then, of course, anything having to do with planning a meal with your family.
Right, because of the sort of the Thanksgiving association, this is definitely a good time for connecting with your family.
Families and friends. Yeah. And also, this is an excellent time to create your broom.
Oh, your besom?
Your besom. If you want to create a broom, this is an excellent time, because right now, broom corn is ripe. And you can, if you want to make a traditional besom, you can actually make a besom
actually, no matter what materials you want to use, it's probably ready right now.
Yep.
Exactly. And you can also tie together, you can make what's called a witch's broom by tying together corn husks or herbs such as cedar, fennel, lavender, peppermint, rosemary, and hang it in your home. And of course, you can make apple dolls, and you can make, corn dollies.
Yeah, you're actually supposed to make 2 apple dolls.
Are you?
Uh-huh.
Is this what we talked about?
This is one for Mabon and one for Modron.
Tell me about this. This isn't about, because we talked last time at Lammas about making, a good doll and a witch doll, depending on how your harvest goes.
Right.
So tell me about these.
So this is making one for Mabon and Modron.
Okay.
And you actually slice the apple in half through the midsection.
Okay.
So its seeds are revealed, because the seeds make a pentacle.
Right. Make the star.
Yep.
Yeah, I like to do that.
And then you need 2 large apples, one for Mabon, one for Modron.
Okay.
2 pencils or dowels, about 12 inches long, a paring knife, a glass or a bowl of water to wash your fingers, a plate, a towel to wipe your hands, of course. You want to peel and core the apples, carve a face in them.
Okay.
Place them on a dowel and stand them in a jar to dry.
Okay.
So now would be a good time to start this.
Yeah, start this early, because
yep.
it'll take a bit for the apples to dry.
Then charge them in a magic circle, and after 2 or 3 weeks, they should look like shrunken heads.
Amazing.
And then you take those and make them into dolls using wheat, dried herbs, or even doll's hair that you can buy at the store. Dress them in tiny robes and bring them into the circle, asking the god and or goddess to charge them with light, and then hang their heads on a witch's cord or a maven wreath.
Wow. Yeah. You could do a whole ritual, too, about reuniting Mabon and Modron.
Yeah. Yep.
You absolutely
That's so cool.
You could.
I love that.
You could include them in your feast as guests.
You should, probably.
You should at the table
Right.
as guests. And then that feast can include anything to do with
any autumnal foods.
Any autumnal foods like stew and soup and
as
bread.
We've discussed several already.
Pumpkin.
Yes.
Although I do have 2 amazing recipes.
Oh?
Yes, which we will share.
We'll put in the notes.
And put in the notes.
There's wine moon cider.
Ooh.
I am intrigued.
So apple cider, cloves, grape juice, some cinnamon sticks, and allspice.
We can do that.
Heat it up in a saucepan. It's basically like making...
Wassail?
Wassail, yep.
But whinier.
Yep, yeah, because you add the grape juice as well. Bring it to a boil, lower it, and simmer it over heat for 5 minutes. Serve in a ladle from a cauldron.
Could you make it with real wine? Like with actual wine?
I'm sure you could, yeah.
If you wanted an alcoholic one?
Well, you're going to lose some of that in the cooking process.
Oh, that's true.
If you're bringing it to a boil, you're going to lose some of that alcohol anyway. So, and then Somerset apple cake.
Ooh.
So,
intrigue.
So, yeah.
I need that recipe forwarded to me.
Well, it'll be in the notes. You can read our notes like everybody else.
And,
But I don't get a special...
No.
and you're supposed to serve it with warm or cold cream. Not ice cream.
But cream.
Yep.
Yes, yeah. So,
Nice.
and that recipe came from Somerset, obviously.
Right.
Which is apple country.
Nice.
So,
Yes.
yeah.
Very cool. And I have one taboo. It was apparently considered unlucky to cut down the very last of the harvest, so it was left to stand in the field by some traditions.
As an offering.
As an offering. So do make sure in your gardens and your herbs and things that you're gathering, make sure you leave some.
I've heard traditions about that from folk gardeners, essentially, who say that what I've heard usually is that the final harvest belongs to the neighbors and should be left for them.
Gotcha. So I have one really, really big thing here.
Okay.
Mabon is basically what in the 1100s was called Michaelmas.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So Michaelmas is still celebrated today in
Catholic?
a Protestant tradition
Protestant
mostly.
tradition, yeah.
Okay.
But it was started by the Catholics in the 1100s to supplant paganism by taking
As
in,
usual.
As usual.
by taking in all of their traditions. I have 13 of those traditions from the 1100s.
Ooh.
So these were actually pagan traditions at the time that had been co-opted
that were adopted by
into Michaelmas. Yep.
Okay.
Michaelmas. Oh,
So
neat.
settling business agreements.
Okay. Interesting.
So right, whether it's rent, debts, wages, any of that kind of stuff,
It should all be wrapped up.
Yep, all be concluded and wrapped up there. All of your harvest workers should be paid if you're actually harvesting.
Right.
All of that should be done in this time frame.
Interesting.
So that you can go into the winter unburdened, as it were.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Elections.
Interesting.
Elections were handled during this time. Now, here's the fun part, right? In Britain, local elections, September the
happen?
29th.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So even though we do them in November,
yeah.
right, they're doing them at the end of September because
That was the
when
traditional
it was
time,
traditional
yeah.
And technically, it's still autumn when we do our elections.
Yeah,
It
but
is,
it's
yeah.
much, much later.
A much later autumn.
Weather predictions, which I think you will find amazing, that this is the time of the year that the new Farmer's Almanac comes out for the next year.
I know, and this year's is saying we're going to have they've actually for the first time in a long time reversed themselves.
Yeah.
Oh?
Because they started by saying it was going to be a mild winter for the North American hemisphere.
And now they're like, we were
now
wrong.
they were wrong, and
Yeah.
the signs are showing this to be true with the geese and
Yeah,
when
we've
they're
already
they're-
had geese flying south.
the woolly worms are thick
out
and
out in force.
thick and ready for winter. So yeah.
Horse racing was a big thing during this time.
I wonder if
Which
that's why
makes-
Epona's
Probably.
Oh, probably.
Well, and also think about the hunt.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, you do a lot of your hunting on horseback.
Right.
At least if you're in the sort of the upper echelons of society, you do.
And originally in central Britain in the 1100 time, the women would bring the horse and then mount behind the men and ride along.
Interesting.
In the race. So, interesting.
That's excellent. They get to be in the race. I love it.
Sharing with the poor.
Okay, yep.
Which was a big deal during that time. Blackberries.
Yes, it's time. It's time for the blackberries.
Well, it's the end of summer,
season,
beginning of autumn.
Yeah, except that.
Oh.
British people of the 9th century considered it bad luck to gather blackberries on or after Michaelmas.
Oh, actually, that makes sense. That makes sense to me because the berries are the best in the summer.
Yeah.
Yep.
But that's also when the birds get out of.
Sure.
Yeah, but it was the thought was that's where the fairies hung out, were in the blackberries.
So don't interfere.
Yeah, and you don't want to interfere with them, especially at a time when the veil
when
between
things
the two worlds are thinned. Yeah.
Are thinning.
Yep. So
just don't bug them.
Oddly enough, geese. You know, if you know Christmas is...
Christmas is coming, the goose is getting fat.
Exactly, yep. And so eggs were a big deal as well. Lots of nuts. They even have... Well, September 14th is known as Devil's Nutting Day. It's where unmarried men and women went out to collect nuts.
And
this reminds me of the spring festival where they went out to collect flowers in the woods and then came back low-key married.
And that is exactly what it is. Yep. So
fall brides instead of spring or summer.
Yep, exactly. Drinking was very big during this time,
because of all the wine and mead.
Absolutely hammered. Yeah, of course the church, Michaelmas, disapproved of this, but it still kept going.
Right, of course it did. You can't make people stop drinking.
Right.
Prohibition didn't make people stop drinking.
True that. The last sheath, which we just talked about, you know, you leave it standing for
whoever,
the Lansvatir or whatever it is that's there. Yep,
the good neighbors.
And then doing love divinations with crab apples. So single women with multiple suitors would gather crab apples together, take them up into the barn loft, and drop them. And however they landed would spell out the initial of the one they should marry.
Isn't that interesting? Because they have a similar tradition in Samhain with the apple peel.
Yep.
Yeah. But that's peeling it.
This is dropping.
And
these are crab apples.
And these are
edible
crab
apples
instead of edible apples. That's true. I just think it's interesting that apples are so associated with divination.
Well, I think part of it is that the thing everyone's most concerned with in sort of folk magic stuff is either prosperity or romance.
Yeah.
So we've maintained a lot of those things.
That's very true.
And if you ate an apple pie and you found a coin in it, you would be married within the next year.
I see mothers with unmarried daughters baking very specific pies.
I'm sure that's exactly what happened. But then once it's in your brain,
you start looking.
You start looking for
you start being more open to anybody showing interest.
That's right. Oh my goodness.
And then the he loves me not, he loves me.
Right. The flower picking.
Flower picking. Yep.
Children,
daisies in particular,
have been performing that kind of magic for years.
Since about
the 1100s.
I guess what I'm saying is it's a tradition that has just passed down. That small children will be out in the flower.
I don't even know where kids learn that.
I don't know where.
I don't remember where I learned it.
I learned it as a small child, and I would be out there. You know.
Some of these things are just innate, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
They're just kind of built into
all children everywhere pick them up somehow.
Somehow these traditions are passed on.
Yep.
You know what?
What?
It's time for reviews.
That was much better.
That was a very good one. Excellent.
Very good.
Oh, thanks.
You've been on point with the intros and outros this whole episode.
It's pretty good.
It's been very good. So this week we are talking about a book that we probably should have done last week, but we didn't.
You mean last episode?
Last episode, but we didn't think about it, and it's too late now, so we're doing it now, and you can't stop us.
That's right. You can't.
Well, but it would have been more appropriate for last episode when we talked to Bill from Pagans and Youth.
I still think it's good for this episode, though.
I think it's good, period.
Yeah, and we're reviewing Magic for the Resistance by Michael M. Hughes, the creator of the Binding Trump spell. And part of the reason that I think it's fine we're reviewing this after our social justice and activism episode is that activism is not a thing you do once and then stop doing. It's a thing you keep doing for the rest of your life,
It becomes
probably.
a lifestyle.
Might I also say that the spell you all performed at your first public thing together
Was the
with
Binding
Mabon
Trump
was
spell.
the Binding Trump spell.
Yes,
so.
it was.
Indeed.
Yeah, it was.
so-
We were actually...
With astounding effect for the people around us who thought it was shit.
Yeah.
I mean, that was ridiculous.
We had just made a new friend, and were invited to her bonfire that she was doing at Mabon, and she found out that we were pagans, and she was super excited because she had just learned about the spell to bind Trump. She was not a pagan, was not confident that she could do it, so she was like, "Can you come to my bonfire and do the spell to bind Trump, please?"
And nobody else there was a pagan. A lot of them were atheists or agnostics, but they were all down.
They were all down to bind Trump.
Binding Trump.
So we did a modified version. We made a poppet because we like to be extra sometimes, and we had a pillowcase lying around, and it was really good. And we loved it because we stuffed the poppet with cotton, and when it caught, it went up like wild.
Yeah.
It made
at
like
the exact right
time. It was very dramatic because it just poofed.
Yeah, it was dramatic timing
it happened
and everything.
right at the end of the spell. I couldn't have planned it better.
Yeah, it was great.
It was amazing.
But
people were freaked.
Yeah, they were. Yes,
they were totally
freaked.
freaked.
They had not expected anything to happen. So when the poppet went up, there was some edging away from the bonfire.
It was. But they were all thrilled to have been part of binding Trump.
Yeah, because everyone there
and his
was like us. So part of the Trump binding spell is that you're actually supposed to perform it at every waning moon until he's out of office. We have not done that.
No.
But we'll start.
But we'll start because I got super mad yesterday about ongoing shenaniganry.
Just more of the...
More of the same.
More of the same.
So, and because I had recently read this book and reminded that the binding against Donald Trump exists, I'm just gonna set up, when we get to the new place, I'm gonna set up a Trump binding altar that I just go to every waning moon.
Yeah.
And I do want to point out that was performed. It just so happened that it was the waning moon around.
Yeah, it was the right
Mabon.
timing.
It was the right timing and
Yeah.
everything. So we just haven't continued every month.
Month. Yeah, but I will at least be doing it from now on because just my rage is up as always. So
but on to the book.
Yes, this book is written by Michael M.
there.
Hughes, who came up with the spell to bind Trump.
Yep.
And he's got he describes it in the book, and he describes several other spells and injunctions essentially that you can perform.
Yeah.
Some of which are super compelling. This book I loved it.
It was very well written.
Yeah.
I liked the first part especially where he talks about the history of
Yeah.
witches and people of, who are
Pagans.
occultists or magical tradition people of some nature who have used
Magic
intentionally to overthrow or to stop bad
Tyrants.
things that are happening. Yeah. Tyrants.
Resistance magic. The
whole
was
such as Hitler.
Yes.
There were a couple of
there was Operation Cone of Power, which is the one people are most familiar with.
That's Gerald Gardner.
That's Gerald Gardner. Well, Gerald Gardner reports it. The New Forest Coven performed it.
But there was also Dion. What is it?
Yes, there was Dion Fortune.
Dion Fortune.
Yes.
Yep.
She created a letter writing campaign. She broke her code of secrecy and basically invited everyone in Britain to join her coven, and she would write letters to everyone who signed up telling them how to meditate and focus on protecting Britain and stopping the war.
And interestingly, she died 3 days after Churchill announced the end of the war.
Yeah. She was just hanging on
She hung on.
to solve that problem.
Never came.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the New Forest
He never
Coven's...
went to Britain.
Yes. The New Forest Coven's Operation Cone of Power was to project the thought, you cannot cross the sea at Hitler and prevent him from even attempting it. And he never did.
He never attempted it.
Ships were ready and they never set sail. We don't have there's not a historical consensus on why that didn't happen.
No.
Probably, and
Anyway, that's just...
obviously the New Forest Coven's like, it was us, so...
Right.
But there were other things that happened. There was also a Navy staff sergeant or something, or a private. He was a private in the Navy, and he wrote a letter to an occultist he had read the book of, asking how he could hex Hitler, because he thought it would be an entertaining thing to do in the evenings, and, you know, on the off chance that it might work, he might as well try. So he wrote a letter asking how he could hex Hitler, and the author was so delighted that he created
a whole ritual.
He created a whole ritual for hexing Hitler and sent it back to this young man, and this young private in the Navy started hosting Hitler hexing parties every month. And every month, he and a bunch of his friends, some of whom were women, and he's reported as having noted that the girls made the best witches, would sit around, get super drunk. They had a huge poppet, a dressing form that they had dressed up to look like Hitler in a Nazi uniform with the mustache and everything, and they would hammer railroad spikes into his heart, cursing, hexing, and in general condemning him to death.
Right.
And then,
if I remember correctly, there was even a newspaper article printed that said you don't have to have a huge effigy, you can do a small puppet.
Yes, yes. And then they would sort of dance around their effigy, cursing and pricking it with pins, and then they would chop its head off and bury it in the woods. They did this every month.
Yep. And like I said, that magazine article encouraged other people who couldn't go to the party,
right,
to do it
in their own homes,
but with a smaller puppet.
Yep. And it was the opinion of the author of the occultist who created the ritual that if Hitler knew about it, that would be great. Yeah. Because it would spook him. So
that was one of the reasons
there was a newspaper article is he went to visit the hexing party and brought a newspaper reporter with him so that the article could be published and hopefully sent to Hitler.
Yeah. Exactly.
So this includes spells for radical justice, women's rights, LGBTQ plus rights,
Black Lives Matter, all kinds of things.
Anti-fascism, environmentalism,
the end
immigration.
Of the book, the end of the book includes a bunch of specific hexes and curses, and the sort of the middle of the book, between the historical stuff and the pre-made spells, he talks a lot about sort of the basics of witchcraft in general if you've never done it.
Right.
Because he wants it to be very accessible to, the people...
To anyone.
To sort of the people we went to that party with who had never done anything like this before.
Exactly.
But who were willing to try because they hated Trump so much.
Exactly.
Right. Yep.
So this book is very much designed for people who maybe are not practicing already, but who are so mad that they're willing to try anything.
And the author himself stated he does not consider himself a witch, a Wiccan, a pagan. He considers himself a magic user.
A magician.
Yeah, a magician.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's been on many paths. He discusses some of them briefly in the book. He used to do ceremonial magic. He's done a bunch of things. And you can sort of see the fingerprints of that in some of the spells.
You can.
But they're very good. I some of those spells, while I was reading them, I got chills. I was like, yep, that's a good one.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think the whole point of this is that we highly recommend this book.
Yeah, I would agree.
Definitely.
Definitely worth having in your library.
It comes out in September.
It's September 8th is its release date, and it'll be $15.99 at your local retailer or
it's not an expensive book. It's about 300 pages, actually. Like, it's a very, respectable book.
264.
Yeah.
And one of the things that he also mentions is that, because some people have said, well, shouldn't you be doing activism? He said, there is nothing wrong with including some magical activism to go along with what you're doing in the mundane world. It just gives it extra punch.
Yep.
Well, and listen, if all you can do is magic, do magic.
Exactly.
Right.
And some of the spells that he include an active component. Like, there's a spell for justice for those slain by police brutality. And you write the name of the victim on the Justice Tarot card, you do some magic, and then at the end of it, you take the Justice Tarot card with the name of the slain, and you leave it at a courthouse.
Yeah.
On the steps of a courthouse.
Right, yeah.
Which, somebody's gonna find that.
Yep.
And that will be probably a compelling moment for that person.
Yeah.
That's active, that's magic and work at the same time.
Yep.
Exactly. So yeah, highly recommended.
So I would say Three Pagans and a Cat endorses Magic for the Resistance by Michael M. Hughes.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I loved this book.
Absolutely. Good. And then I also had a little... I wanted to give a shout out. I wanted to give a shout out. When we were at Lansing Pagan Pride, we visited a bunch of vendors, and one of the vendors that we purchased some soaps and some other things from, and that was a sugar scrub, is Earth Mother's Soap and Soak. She is on Facebook. You can find her under Earth Mother Soap and Soak. She's pretty strictly on Facebook. I think you have to actually, in order to buy her products.
She doesn't have a website.
Yeah, she doesn't have a website. You message her with what you want. But these are high quality soaps.
I'm actually using one of them.
Which is
I've
amazing.
never used anything other than Ivory soap my entire life.
Yeah. Ivory soap.
And they're high quality. I believe the soaps are goat's milk. The sugar scrub
Depends
that I have.
on it. Yeah. They had other things other than goat's milk.
Right.
But what I bought was goat's milk.
Yeah. And the sugar scrub that I have is it's sandalwood, and it's excellent. It's very well crafted. It leaves you just feeling awesome. So anyway, go visit Earth Mother Soap and Soak on Facebook and order something from her, or look for her at a pagan event because she's got good stuff.
Yeah, the one thing I liked about it is most of these soap companies are very floral smelling, and the soaps that I was able to find through her were like fir needle, and so it's got a different, a little bit more earthy and less flowery. So I like that.
Yeah, Carr is very sensitive to floral scents.
Yeah.
He does not like them, and it's a very strong aversion.
Yeah,
exactly.
So I can't go into a Yankee Candle.
Not at all.
Exactly.
He can barely stand outside a Yankee Candle.
So again, check her out at Earth Mother's Soap and Soak.
Yep. And that's it for the reviews.
That was
Also
good.
classy.
Very nice.
Thanks.
Excellent.
Yeah. Sang all the way through that.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, didn't fall off or anything.
Yeah.
So I think that's everything.
I think
unless there was some
you
content you guys wanted to
talk a little bit
cover.
about the dark.
Oh yeah, the Dark Mother. Yeah.
Mother.
So Modron doesn't actually feature in this story much.
No.
In the Mabinogion, we only really hear about her through the fact that Mabon was stolen from her. But there is definitely a connection to sort of the Demeter-Persephone story, where you hear a lot more about Demeter.
Exactly.
If you're probably familiar, Persephone is stolen, kidnapped, maybe moves by herself, sort of depends on your personal gnosis, to the underworld to get with Hades, and Demeter flips out and causes droughts, essentially. We usually think of her as causing winter, but actually in Greece, what she was causing at the time was a period of drought where everything just died because there was no rain.
Right.
It wasn't winter as we think of it. But we associate her in our area with winter.
And so what a lot of people do at this time is any of the Dark Mother aspects. So we are talking Kali, Hecate, Demeter, any of these.
At least depressed
in
Demeter.
In her darker aspect, the crone aspect of the triple goddess. It's a great time if you are dealing with some kind of a fear, a trauma, something you need to heal from. Meditating on your shadow self.
Yeah.
Is a good way to reach out to one of these darker aspect goddesses and asks for assistance in dealing with some of the things that might be to bring you back into that balance. Basically, if you're dealing with depression or anxiety, any of those things,
or trauma,
anything that's pulling your life out of balance. Reaching out to one of these goddesses is a good way to help bring that back into balance. And one of the things I'm seeing here is that you can decorate your altar with symbols, for instance, of Demeter or Persephone, with obviously purple or black, gold and yellow, any of those types of things. You can also, when you're casting your circle, or if you do that, you can also do a ritual to Demeter to bring, you can light a candle to bring Persephone out from the darkness, that kind of thing.
Although at this point in the year, she's going into the darkness.
Right. Or to remember her as she goes into the darkness. But the idea is just take a few minutes, meditate on the darker aspects of your own soul, pain that you need to be rid of, anger, frustration.
And I would also say, like, not necessarily that you need to get rid of.
No, but
maybe that you need to use.
Integrate.
Right, or integrate.
Well, and that's what I'm saying. I guess get rid of is the wrong word. To bring balance to yourself. Yeah. Acknowledge, don't ignore those parts of your life. Acknowledge that they are a part of you, part of your experience.
Right.
Here's what I would say. The Dark Mother, still a mother.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
At the end of the day, still a mom.
The Morrigan, she's a mom.
Still gonna mom you. if you give her the opportunity. Mabon was taken from his mother at 3 days old, and she never knew him. But at the end of the day, the impression I got from the story is that she still loved him.
She's still his mom.
She was still grieving him. Mm-hmm. And when he was rescued, what I choose to believe, because the story doesn't say, is that when he had repaid that debt he had to the protagonist and caught the boar, what I choose to believe is that he went to Modron.
Yeah.
Right. And she helped him heal.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if this is something that speaks to you, this is an excellent time to reach out to one of the dark goddesses or dark aspect goddesses, because so many people are afraid of that term, the dark goddess.
Well, which we'll be getting into later in a future series. We're gonna talk about some of the gods and goddesses.
Exactly. And but as you were saying, they're the crone aspect of the triple goddess. They are a mother. They will welcome you with open arms and help you heal.
Yep. That it?
Yeah, I think so.
Cool.
I think that's everything we wanted to talk about.
Sounds about right.
In that case, you can find us on 3pagansandacat.com. You can also find us on Facebook at the number 3 PAAC. That's 3-pack. You can also find us on Twitter, 3_pagans. I got it right that time.
Yes, you did.
And we're on the Discord, so you can find that link for Discord on our website, or usually in the link for every episode.
Every episode should have the links to the Discord and the Facebook and the Twitter on it.
And we thanked all of our patrons at the beginning, but you can become one of those and be a patron as well. That's the Patreon link that you see everywhere.
Yep. We have a Redbubble where you can buy shirts with our logo on it, if that's your thing.
Yep.
I mean, other things, not just shirts.
Yeah, it's
a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff.
Mugs,
with
notebooks.
art created by Ode. There are services that I provide listed on the website.
Yep.
There are also, we have appearances that we are going to be doing.
Yeah.
Including the Witches' Ball in at the end of October.
October 11th.
But October 11th, Ode and I will be at the Flint Witches' Tea.
Yep.
It's
from 6 to 9.
From 6 to 9 on Thursday, October 11th. I'm going to be reading the pendulum or doing pendulum readings, and Ode is going to be doing tarot readings.
Yep.
We're very excited to be a part of that because it's going to be a fun night.
It'll be the first time I have done readings in public, probably.
Yeah. So it's gonna be fun. So if you're in the Flint area on October 11th, it's a Thursday. We'll make sure that there's links and everything so you know how to find us. But come say hi.
Yep.
Yeah.
We'll also be hanging out at Grand Rapids Pagan Pride.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Ann Arbor
Probably
Pagan
Ann Arbor
Pride.
Pagan Pride, yeah.
Oh, I do want to say about the Flint Tea. It is a ticketed event.
Yeah.
And the tickets are selling fast.
Yeah, so if you're interested,
go to the link and get a ticket.
All right, that's it, right?
Yeah, I think so.
All right.
I think that's everything.
We're good. Covered everything?
I think so.
I didn't forget anything?
Nope.
No, I think we managed to recover everything we talked about.
And a little more.
Yeah, in the one that we lost. So
Okay.
yeah,
all I can think of is,
we're good to go.
Farewell,
Auf Wiedersehen, good night.
You've been listening to 3 Pagans and a Cat. Find out more information at www.3pagansandacat.com.